Hello, my friends. It's Monday, August 11th, 2025, and I'm your host, Radical Russ Belville, your Red State refugee. And welcome to the Radical Russ Show, coming to you from Rolla J Studios in my undisclosed mountain hideaway in the beautiful state of Jefferson region of Southern Oregon. It goes down smooth. Hey! On this week's smoke session, the Big Balls Beatdown is Trump's excuse to federalize Washington, D.C. as yet another Epstein distraction. Trump sacks the Bureau of Labor Statistics over bad news and orders up new numbers. California declares it will match, but not beat, Texas in midterm cheating. Republicans think they're being booed at town halls by bust-in Democrats. Attorney Alan Dershowitz bravely takes on the civil rights battle of the century. Idaho's Christian Nationalist Kirkers count Defense Secretary Hegseth as a supporter, and a look at the PragerU content the right would use to replace PBS. But before we get to all the serious political stuff, we've got time for 3 quick hits, and boy am I excited because NFL football is back. We've got some preseason games going on, and despite the terrible pass dropping by the Green Bay Packers that I root for, there was another event that happened in a preseason game that made history.
Holy smokes, they got a shot.
He just kicked a 70-yard field goal. Are you kidding me?
Crazy.
I've never seen that, the NFL record.
Yeah, it's just a preseason game, so I don't know that it counts for the record books, but Cam Little, kicker for the Jacksonville Jaguars, went and kicked an end-of-the-half 70-yard field goal. That's a field goal where the ball is set up on your own 40-yard line, kicking it 60 yards and the end zone across to the goalpost, 70-yard field goal. And there's been some people that have been online saying, a field goal that's any longer than 60 yards, they ought to count that as 4 points, right? Because 60-yard field goal, you'll be on your own side of the field, right? You score from your own side of the field. It ought to be worth more points, like 4-pointer. I say no to this. No. Bad idea. You set this up. You set up a situation where a team is down by 4 points toward the end of the game on the opponent's side of the field, and they're going to purposefully try to lose yards. They're going to try to go backwards so they can kick the 4-pointer to tie the game. I don't think we should be doing anything in the NFL to incentivize people to go backwards. I also wanted to talk a little bit about this video that came across my social media feed on Blue Sky, and I actually wrote a post about it up on my blog at radicalruss.com if you want to check out the actual video. It's called MAGA Ballroom, and it's a great video that basically shows the Donald Trump new golden MAGA ballroom in the year 2028, and compares and contrasts the scenes of all the MAGA Republicans dining in the golden ballroom versus scenes of MAGA who are suffering, farmers and workers who've been laid off and Latinos for Trump who are being deported and such. And the video ends with all of these MAGA gathering at the Capitol, at the ballroom, throwing a brick through the window and beginning an insurrection. And the close of the video is, and that was 100 years ago when the healing began, right? So it's a wonderful video, but my main problem with it is that the healing doesn't begin until the white Republican right people make it happen. Because nowhere in this video is there a blue-haired liberal. There's no fabulous trans people. There's only 2 shots in the video of any people of color. And one shot is the Latinos for Trump, and the other shot is a black janitor who's got a red MAGA cap in his hand. They're the only people of color at all in the whole video. The rest of it is all white MAGA Republicans who are getting fed up with how Donald Trump has mistreated them, and they are the ones that lead the insurrection, not the people on the left, not the Democrats. And it only made me upset because I think it might actually be accurate in its prediction. in these quick hits, I talk about my Tubi TV night, my free TV that I watch, and I'll cover that at the end of the show. But I actually have a real live current in-theater movie review for you this time. And I took my lady love out to see the Tuesday night cheap showing of the new Naked Gun movie with Liam Neeson and Pam Anderson. And I gotta say, it's all right. I know a lot of people out there praising it, going, oh my God, the Naked Gun is so great. And I don't want to give it short shrift. It was a good enough movie. It was fine. It was fine, right? But I got some problems with it. First of all, it felt a lot like a Naked Gun movie or an airplane movie, a Abrams Zucker movie, that they were really faithful to that setup, the whole parody aspect that those movies had. But it felt like Abrams Zucker light. It felt like they made the Naked Gun and they put a whole bunch of jokes in it. And then when they got to post, they said, yeah, we need to take about half the jokes out because this goes too fast and people won't be able to follow it these days. You know, the cell phone generation won't follow it. That's what it felt like to me. It felt like the jokes were like, okay, here comes a joke and here's the joke for you. And now here comes another joke, right? It was like very obvious. And the thing about the Naked Gun and the airplane movies was like the jokes came at you so fast and there were so many of them, you could not catch all of them in one sitting. You had to watch the movie a second or third time to catch some of the other subtle jokes that were going on in the background. You're not going to have that problem with this Naked Gun movie. It's one joke at a time happening and you only need one sitting to watch the whole thing. The other issue I have is that Liam Neeson is not Leslie Nielsen. Leslie Nielsen had comedic chops and Liam Neeson's really only just kind of playing a parody of his Taken character. It's just, he's parodying Liam Neeson. He's not parodying the whole genre. I don't know how to better explain it. He just didn't really pull it off for me. Pam Anderson, though, was great. Pam Anderson was fantastic. Let's get her back into some more films. Our main story this week is the continuing effort by Donald Trump and his supporters to minimize and distract from the ongoing Jeffrey Epstein saga, the cover-up that's happening in plain sight. We had the vice president and the attorney general, deputy attorney general, head of FBI, all being called together at the vice president's residence to discuss how they would handle the Epstein situation. And then they declared, no, that was not true. They are not meeting at the vice president's house. It was all fake news. And then they went and got together anyway at the White House. So, yeah, cover up happening in plain sight. This is the genius of Donald Trump, as he learned that, that you just do everything in plain sight. You just do it all out in the open. You grab the pussies, you steal the money, you do it all out in the open. And the media and law enforcement don't know how to deal with that. It's all happening right out there in the open. So they're working together, trying to find out how they're going to respond to the Epstein situation.
For 20 years, you had Obama and George W. Bush's Department of Justice go easy on this guy. They didn't fully investigate the case. They didn't show any curiosity about the case. And now Donald J. Trump is asking his Department of Justice to show full transparency. And somehow that's a criticism of Donald J. Trump and not Barack Obama and George W. Bush.
That, of course, is Vice President J.D. Vance trying to distract everyone from the fact that Barack Obama and George W. Bush were not close personal friends with the convicted pedophile pimp Jeffrey Epstein. Donald Trump was his best friend for a decade and a half, pledging total transparency. Fine, release the files. And by the way, as far as Obama and Bush and their Justice Departments not paying attention to this, because at that time, back in the 2000s, this was a state-level case, Palm Beach in Florida, and it was up to the Attorney General of Florida to be prosecuting that case. Who was the Attorney General of Florida at that time? Oh, yes, Pam Bondi. The same woman who is the Attorney General of the United States today, and who, if we were talking about a federal case that should have been brought up during the Obama or Bush administrations, who was the U.S. Attorney down there in Florida who would bring up such federal charges? Oh, yeah, it was Alex Acosta, the U.S. attorney down there, who managed to broker a sweetheart deal with Jeffrey Epstein that let him out on just a couple of misdemeanor charges, for which he was able to serve 13 months in the county jail, where he was given work release regularly so he could go back to his own office. Alex Acosta, who you'll recall was then later given the Secretary of Labor position by who? Donald J. Trump. So the latest distraction in Trump world now is that Trump is going to federalize Washington, D.C., send the National Guard in, take over the D.C. police because of the rampant crime wave of violence that's going on in Washington, D.C. Just to check out these numbers here as we... Oh, what's this? Oh, I'm sorry. I've got this report from January from the Department of Justice showing that crime is massively down in Washington, D.C. Some of the lowest numbers ever recorded. Crime is massively down, except when it comes to big balls. That's right. The Doge staffer, known by the moniker Big Balls, apparently got carjacked, attacked, something like that in Washington, D.C. A pair of 15-year-olds beat up Big Balls, or the story is allegedly they were trying to carjack someone and Big Balls jumped in to save and then they beat up, whatever. Big Balls got his ass kicked, so that's why we need to federalize D.C. First Los Angeles, then the District of Columbia. Seems like Donald Trump wants to set up a military in every majority-minority city in the United States. I'm sure Detroit is next, right? Can't have cities where there's a majority of black people just wandering around, enjoying their lives, going about their business. Latino people working hard. Can't have that. It's all an attempt to distract us from his kryptonite. Jeffrey Epstein is Donald Trump's kryptonite, and we need to hammer this home. And I know there's some Democrats out there. They're like, no, this is a distraction from Medicaid cuts. This is a distraction from the big, beautiful bill. This is a distraction. Yeah. There's lots of fronts in fascism. Lots of fronts that we have to face. And we should not ignore the terrible things Trump is doing on all these other fronts. But politically, there is one front. And that is this Trumpstein cover-up. This is what can bring him down. This is what can cause a fracture in the MAGA base. There was a poll that came out just the other day that said that even if Donald Trump is found to be in Jeffrey Epstein's client list, there's incontrovertible proof and videos of him paying for and raping teenage girls, that 43% of the GOP, 43% of Republicans would still support him over Trumpstein. And I saw a lot of reactions to this. People were shocked by that. I'm shocked by it in a good way. That's telling me 57% of Republicans would reject Donald Trump if the Epstein files prove his pedophilic nature. That's a win. We should be going for that as a win. There's nothing else out there that could get 57% of Republicans to reject Donald Trump at this point. So why aren't Democrats jumping at this, hammering it every day? Well, probably because there's some donors on that list, I'm betting. I'm betting there's some high dollar value Democratic donors on that list. Maybe even a few high value Democrats as well. There's rumors of Bill Clinton, rumors of Bill Richardson, the former New Mexico governor and cabinet secretary, rumors of Bill Gates. What is it with the Democratic bills? Anyway, so what? We don't care. Release the list. Bill Clinton's on that list? Great. Throw the book at him. Lock him up. Bill Richardson on the list? Great. Throw the book at him. Lock him up. Bill Gates? Lock him up. That's the thing. We don't care. We want the full list. We're not like the MAGA side that's going to try to cover up and excuse pedophilia and sex trafficking. We want the whole list. Now, there's a guy I follow out there online on Blue Sky, His name is Mark Jacobs, and he put together quite the timeline of Trump and his rampant pedophilia and sexual degeneracy. I'll have a link up there in my show notes, but he runs down the timeline pretty well. First of all, in a 2002 interview, Jeffrey Epstein said, "I was Donald Trump's closest friend for 10 years. In 2002, Trump said he was friends with Epstein for 15 years. And he added that Epstein was a terrific guy who liked females, quote, on the younger side, end quote." So 2002, smack dab in the middle of the time, and Jeffrey Epstein is pimping these girls, having them raped by rich, powerful men. Trump says he's known him for 15 years. He's a great guy. Epstein says, "I was his closest friend for 10 years. Both of them agree they were great friends for at least a decade. But we're supposed to believe Donald Trump had no idea what Jeffrey Epstein was up to. Right. That's like saying you hung out with me between 2000 and 2020, but you never smoked pot. I mean, theoretically, I suppose it's possible, but there's a whole lot of events and photographic evidence that would suggest otherwise, okay? Hell, Donald Trump's got more pictures with Jeffrey Epstein and Ghislaine Maxwell than I have of myself with Tommy Chong. And I have a lot of photos of myself with Tommy Chong. In 1999, when Trump was in his 50s, this is continuing from Mark Jacobs, he said his daughter Ivanka made him swear to her that he would never date a girl younger than her.
She's just 17 and she's doing great, Ivanka, and she made me promise her, swear to her, that I would never date a girl younger than her. She grows older, the field is getting very limited severely, you know.
That's Trump on the Howard Stern show in 1999, when he is 53 years old, when he is currently dating Melania Knauss, who at the time was 29 years old, telling his 17-year-old daughter he wouldn't have sex with anyone 16 years old or younger. So 17 and 18 was okay by Donald Trump's view when he was in his 50s. In 2004, in a radio interview with Howard Stern, he said it was okay to call his daughter Ivanka a piece of ass, end quote. And 2 years later, he said in a TV interview, quote, "If Ivanka weren't my daughter, perhaps I'd be dating her." This is continuing from Mark Jacob, who also points out a former model recalled that Trump asked her out for dinner in '89. He said Trump, then in his early 40s, inquired about her age. Quote, "I said 17, and he said, quote, 'That's just great. You're not too old, not too young,' end quote." Stacy Wilkes was a 16-year-old modeling contestant in the Look of the Year contest in which Trump was a judge and liked to hang out behind the scenes. Quote, "Every time we changed, it was like Trump would find a reason to come backstage," end quote, she recalled. In 2005, the famous Access Hollywood tape that said, quote, "I just start kissing them. Just kiss. I don't even wait. When you're a star, they let you do it. You can do anything. Grab them by the pussy. You can do anything," end quote. Dozens of women have accused Trump of sexual abuse. A jury found that he sexually abused writer E. Jean Carroll, awarded her millions of dollars in damages, and twice damages for him defaming her by lying about the fact that the rape ever happened. A woman filed a lawsuit accusing Trump of raping her when she was 13. That would be Katie Johnson. Look that one up. But she dropped the suit after being threatened and her family's life threatened. We told you about the secret deal that Alex Acosta made in 2008, and then 9 years later, Trump names Acosta as his labor secretary. We also, of course, know that Jeffrey Epstein died in 2019 in the custody of Trump's Federal Department of Justice when Epstein's roommate had for some reason been moved out of that cell that night, and two cameras that were facing his cell somehow didn't work that night, and he had been placed on a suicide watch, but nobody was suicide watching him in that night. And they put out a video where there's a missing 1 minute worth of footage, and so on and so forth. And Trump's Attorney General Pam Bondi said in February the Epstein client list was sitting on her desk right now to review. 5 months later, they say there is no Epstein list. And then Trump says she handled that quite well. But yes, there is an Epstein list, but the Democrats made it. Bill Clinton and George Soros and Obama put stuff in that list that didn't exist. That's a total hoax. But then Obama and Bush's administrations never did anything with that list that Obama made that would harm Trump. They sat on it and waited until Trump could be president again and then not release the list and then accuse him of a cover-up. Yeah, that's the ticket. Well, I mentioned in our last segment the other news about Donald Trump firing the woman who was the head of the Bureau of Labor Statistics because they came back with jobs numbers showing a massive downturn in the amount of jobs being created in the United States. The Trump economy is beginning to take effect. Fewer companies are producing jobs, beginning new starts, beginning factories. It's all coming to a head, folks, and Trump is so desperate to make sure people do not attach this to him that he went and fired the lady who came up with the numbers like a good tin pot dictator would do and hired someone that would bring him some new numbers. Apparently, Trump's got some new numbers.
But this chart is pretty amazing right here. All new numbers. Okay?
All new numbers, okay? Trump, pay no attention to the fact that a pound of ground beef now costs more than the federal minimum wage. Pay no mind to the fact that Trump thinks there's $1.98 gas out there when no one's any lower than $2.50. Pay no mind to what's actually happening. Just believe Trump and his new numbers. What are these new numbers? The job reports, they're up 11%. 11%. That's right. New numbers. And inflation is down 0.070. That's right. 0.070. That's the new numbers from Trump. Oh my God. But one thing you can definitely count on Trump, the old Trump, is the racism. That old school racism that Trump engages in. He was talking to the Squawk Box on CNBC the other day and talking about how the farmers have been reaching out to him because, my gosh, with all these ICE raids, we're having farms where the crop is rotting in the fields because they can't get any workers to show up. The workers aren't showing up, knowing that they could be subject to ICE raids. It's happening here. There have been a couple of national stories coming out of Oregon. Cherry producer talking about cherries rotting on the trees there because no one will come out and pick them. And they're calling for people. Come on out and pick the fields. We got plenty of work for you. Plenty of work picking the crops. And for some reason, no one's showing up to pick the crops. But Donald Trump knows why.
But we're taking care of our farmers. We can't let our farmers not have anybody. These people, you can't replace them very easily. People that live in the inner city are not doing that work. They're just not doing that work. And they've tried, we've tried, everybody tried. They don't do it. These people do it naturally. I said, what happens if they get it to a farmer the other day? What happens if they get a bad back? He said, they don't get a bad back, sir, because if they get a bad back, they die. I said, that's interesting, isn't it? These are very, in many ways, they're very, very special people.
I love the CNBC guy at the end of that clip trying to steer the president out of saying blatantly racist things. Geez, they just naturally do it. The Latinos just naturally are built for picking crops because they don't get bad backs or else they die. and the inner city people, the blacks, the inner city people, you can't get them to do that work. Well, I mean, unless you put a bunch of guys on horseback with some whips to make them do that work. I mean, that worked okay for a couple centuries, right? Oh my God. They naturally have the ability to do it. This is what you voted for, MAGA. This is the racism that you installed a second time at our White House. Okay, time to turn to my left and see what's going on with the Democratic Party on the national scene. And of course, the big story happening this week is the continuing efforts by the Texas Republicans to gerrymander their state to find 5 more congressional seats for the midterm elections, which, like I said in a previous podcast, this is good news. This is good news because it shows they don't have the vote hacked well enough to be able to guarantee a victory in the midterms. They feel they've got to go to an extra level of cheating. They've already gerrymandered the hell out of Texas as it is, but they need to gerrymander it some more to try to keep 5 more seats in the Republican column. And of course, we've all decried gerrymandering as blatantly unfair, blatantly undemocratic. A simple case of the politicians choosing their voters rather than the voters choosing their politicians. And we've talked about this before, too, how on the Democratic side, we've kind of tied our own hands on this in places like Michigan, where we've created these independent redistricting commissions to set up fair districts for the electorate to be able to choose their representatives. So one side openly cheats, has no problem openly cheating by gerrymandering the hell out of their states. Our side, well, we're going to take the high road and play fair and make sure we can't gerrymander our states. Well, it's good to see that governors out there like J.B. Pritzker in Illinois, Kathy Hochul in New York, and Gavin Newsom in California are talking about doing something about this by using gerrymandering as an ameliorative remedy to the gerrymandering being done by the Republicans. The problem is that they finally decided they shouldn't take a knife to a gunfight, but in deciding to take a gun to a gunfight, finally, they're only going to bring the exact same type of gun.
We are talking about emergency measures to respond to what's happening in Texas, and we will nullify what happens in Texas. We will pick up 5 seats with the consent of the people. And that's the difference between the approach we're taking and the approach they're taking. We're doing it on a temporary basis. We're doing it in a fully transparent way. And we're doing it by asking the people of the state of California for their consent and support. Mark that stark contrast to what's happening in Texas and other states.
That's California Governor Gavin Newsom explaining how they will bring a gun to the gunfight, but only the same type of gun with the same number of bullets so that we can keep it fair. Oh my God, Democrats! What the? Jesus. Look, if you're going to bring a gun to a gunfight and they bring a 6-shooter, you bring a Tech 9. You bring an AR-15. You bring an M60 machine gun. You're not going to get them to stop cheating if you set up a system where the cheating provides them a fair, balanced electorate. You have to out-cheat them. You have to over-cheat them. You have to make it look to them, you have to make them fear the fact that Democrats could super gerrymander all their blue states in such a way that the Republicans could never gain the House of Representatives. And only then will Republicans turn around and say, oh, you know what? This gerrymandering thing sucks. We ought to get rid of it nationwide. But if you're only going to do gerrymandering to get the same 5 seats that the Texas Republicans gerrymander for 5 seats, you're only going to do it on a temporary basis. You're just signaling to the Republicans that if they can get through this election and win it again, they can keep doing what they're doing. It's time to bring a bigger gun to the gunfight, Gavin Newsom. I wanted to talk about here is a story that came up about how Republicans are reviving the whole anti-transgender ad campaign to try to fight for the midterms. Once again, the whole Kamala is for they, them, Donald Trump is for you idea. And I say, good. Bring that back, because we had a shitty time trying to respond to it the first time. Maybe we can get it better this time around. And let me tell you how you respond to this whole Kamala is for they, them, Donald Trump is for you. First of all, the mistake that Democrats make in trying to defend the transgender issue is trying to get people to agree with the transgender issue. It ain't a matter of whether you agree with it or not, whether you actually believe that a transgender woman is a woman, or whether you believe a transgender woman is a man who has some sort of disorder. That doesn't matter. Democrats get hung up on the whole trans women are women thing, trying to get everyone else on the right, people that are steeped in these religious values that make it impossible for them to believe there is anything but an Adam and Eve, who will never be convinced that a trans woman is a woman. You get hung up on trying to convince them of that, rather than trying to convince them that no matter what you think about your neighbor, how much you may disagree with your neighbor, how much you don't like your neighbor's lifestyle, that doesn't matter. Mind your own fucking business. Democrats need to respond to Kamala is for they, them with a very simple response. Donald Trump is for me, myself, and I. Democrats are for us. All of us, no matter who we are. I've got all sorts of problems with all sorts of my neighbors out there. There's a whole cadre of neighbors out there, a whole bunch of people I live amongst who subscribe to this radical ideology that declares they must engage in genital mutilation of their infant boys. I think that's despicable. These kids don't have any say on whether or not they get the tips of their cocks cut off. But there's a whole religion, couple, 3, 4, 5 of them that believe in that shit. And we learn to live with each other. And I don't agree with their lifestyle, the way they choose to live it, but in America, I mind my own business. It's not my business. We got all sorts of people live all sorts of ways that I disagree with. But if we could get Democrats on the side of mind your own business, which Tim Walz started, and I don't know what consultants got to him and made him stop that in the campaign, but that's the way you win the transgender issue. Don't try to convince people how to feel about transgender people. What is the right way to understand the transgender issue? It doesn't matter if they understand it or not. What matters is you live and let live. That everyone has equal rights and equal protections under the law, that it's with liberty and justice for all. And you just keep pointing out, Donald Trump is for me, myself, and I. Donald Trump is for what he and his rich buddies can get away with, what his rich criminal benefactors can get away with. And that Democrats are for us. No matter what background you come from, no matter what country you come from, no matter what language you speak, no matter what God you worship, or if you don't worship at all, Democrats are for us. I hope we get it right this time. The other thing I'd start counseling Democrats on is to get behind 3-word phrases. Keep it simple. Come up with some 3-word phrases that everyone can get behind. I'd start with, fuck this shit. Just in general, it's the whole Trump thing. Fuck this shit. Lock them up. Bust the pedophiles. Restore American democracy. No more bribes. Tax the rich. Protect the dolls. Make them pay. Pack the court. Undo Project 2025. Vote for Pedro. Oh, wait, sorry. Wrong list. That's Napoleon Dynamite. End Citizens United. Medicare for all. This is the difference between Republicans and Democrats, is that Republicans have a whole worldview that they are trying to promote. It's not just a policy here and there. They have a whole worldview of white Christian patriarchal nationalism that they're trying to promote and a whole infrastructure behind it. It's time for us to build ours as well. We'll talk more about that coming up in our Radical Rant. All right, now we turn to the right and take a look what's happening with the Republicans all across our nation. And boy, are they hearing from it on their break at the town hall meetings. We got some clips from some of these for you, and it's just amazing how these Republicans are reacting to being booed at their town halls.
If you choose not to work, you do not get free health care. You do not get free health care.
That's Mike Flood, a representative in Nebraska, at his town hall meeting, getting booed every time he starts talking about Medicaid and work requirements. And he kept trying to goad the audience, saying, well, you know, if someone doesn't work, they're able-bodied, you think they should get free health care? And the audience is overwhelmingly like, yes, absolutely. Like the worst criminal scumbag, undocumented immigrant, whoever, they deserve health care. Every human being deserves health care. And it's funny because these Republicans are shocked. Like they're coming out there saying these lines as if they think, you know, well, this will get them. I'll show them that they can't possibly be for, you know, layabouts and gold brickers to be getting health care. Yes. Yes, we are. The most lazy person, the most undeserving person absolutely deserves health care in the richest nation on earth.
So due process is in this situation is, are you here legally?
That isn't.
That is due process. Yes, it is.
Due process is getting arrested and charged with a crime and seeing a judge, and these people are not seeing a judge. That's not true.
They don't have a right to see a judge.
Why?
They came here illegally. They came here illegally.
That's Indiana's Lieutenant Governor Beckwith, who was at a town hall, and this is with them talking about the ICE kidnappings of undocumented people or alleged undocumented people right out on the street. Basically, like the South Park episode said, if it's brown, it goes down. They're going after all the brown people. And the Lieutenant Governor of Indiana saying they don't get due process because they're here illegally. Well, how do you know that? Don't you think that determining whether or not someone has legal status is something that would come through, say, some sort of process that they were due? Yes, these guys are not understanding that we actually believe in the Constitution here on the left. We actually support all of the amendments, not just the second. And within that are the 13th, 14th, and 15th amendments here that are guaranteeing birthright citizenship. We've got the 6th, 7th, 8th amendments guaranteeing due process, guaranteeing, no cruel and unusual punishment. We actually believe in those amendments. We got more than just one in our Constitution. They can't understand that, we think that everyone should have health care. It doesn't matter whether they're here legally or not. It doesn't matter whether they're a criminal or not. If a pedophile like Donald Trump gets free government health care, why not an undocumented immigrant who's picking grapes? And due process is for all persons, like the census is for all persons. Trump is trying to start another mid-decade census going completely against the Constitution and is deciding not to count anyone who is not here legally. When the Constitution couldn't be more clear, it's about counting all the persons. Hell, I think Donald Trump would go back to wanting to count the black people as just 60%. They don't understand that we believe in the Constitution. They also don't seem to understand that we live in Republican districts too.
You talked about he had a town hall with his constituents. I wish that were true. As we know, the Democratic Party buses in a lot of people from outside his district.
That's Representative Lisa McClain from Michigan. And I do at least have to give her proper credit for saying the Democratic Party. Thank you, Representative McClain. But guess what? we actually live in some of these districts that are represented by Republicans. Earlier in that segment that you were on, you mentioned how the Representative Flood from Nebraska won his district by 20 points. Well, a 60-40 win. So doesn't that mean that 40% of his constituents are Democrats? Doesn't that mean that we don't really need to bus anyone in from anywhere else? Like, are you pretending that when a Republican wins his district, all the Democrats move out and no longer have a say? That a Republican representative only represents the Republicans in his district? Well, I guess that probably is what you are saying. Time to take a look at a regional story, and we go all the way across the country to the island of Martha's Vineyard off the coast of Massachusetts, where famed defense attorney Alan Dershowitz is standing up for the civil rights movement of our time. That's right. Is he going out to defend the Hispanic people whose constitutional rights are being violated on a regular basis by the ICE Gestapo? No, that's not it. Is he jumping in to help the black victims of police violence who are regularly brutalized on American streets? No, I'm afraid that's not it. Is he standing up for the transgender people in the United States who just had the transgender military members? They're getting their retirements taken away after they've been kicked out of the military, or the athletes who are being banned from their sports? No, that's not it. Alan Dershowitz is taking up the civil rights battle of our century for Alan Dershowitz's right to purchase a pierogi.
In an effort to try to restore community and to ask you to sell me pierogi in the interest of keeping the island together, so we don't have to have two pierogi stands, one for anti-Zionists and one for people who will sell to everybody. So I'd ask you to please just sell me any one of your products to show that you're prepared to sell to anybody and not allow your anti-Zionism to decide which people will sell. You'll sell to.
So if you haven't been following this story, there's a farmer's market that they have on the weekends there in Martha's Vineyard. And there's this pierogi store owner, or tent, pop-up tent, called Good Pierogi. And last week, Alan Dershowitz went there to try to buy a pierogi. Now, the owner of the store, who goes by they, them pronouns, would not sell a pierogi to Alan Dershowitz. They recognized that Alan Dershowitz was a good friend of Jeffrey Epstein's and very often hung out on the island and even admitted to getting a massage on the island, but it was from an old Slavic woman and he kept his underwear on. Okay, so he was denied this pierogi because he's a friend of Epstein's, and also because the pierogi store owner doesn't support the Zionism that Alan Dershowitz supports, doesn't support the ongoing slaughter by IDF forces against the Palestinians in Gaza. So for that reason and for the Epstein reason, refused service to Dershowitz. Now, Dershowitz made a big deal about this. Oh my God, what a big civil rights issue this is, that a store owner wouldn't serve him. And he's trying to make it about anti-Semitism. Because this is what they do on the right. Whenever you criticize Israel, whenever you criticize the slaughter, they want to turn it into you hate Jews. You're anti-Semitic. You're terrible. You're a terrible bigot. So he tried to play that card. It didn't work. And most of the people on Martha's Vineyard have had it with Alan Dershowitz as well. They don't invite him to the parties anymore. He's no longer welcome on the cocktail circuit. So he threatened legal action against the owner. The owner's name is Krem Miskovich, who wouldn't serve him, and posted online that he was going to sue the, quote, bigoted vendor, end quote. So this also came on, he posted another tweet saying that Good Pierogi's food, quote, was tainted with the poison of anti-Semitism, end quote. Continuing, quote, As I correctly suspected, the bigot who refused to sell me pierogi, Krem Miskovich, is a notorious anti-Semite who is part of an anti-Semitic organization that protests Jewish, not only Israeli, cultural events and doesn't believe in Israel's right to exist or to respond to what those haters regard as the justified massacres of October 7th. End quote. Don't patronize anti-Semites who refuse to sell to Jewish Zionists, he continued. End quote.
I am very surprised that you're here because of the things that you've been saying about us and the business online.
Yeah.
Well, good pierogi is our business and Krem Miskovich is me, and I really do not appreciate what you've been sharing in the last week since is it true?
Of course.
You have proof that I am an anti-Semite?
Yeah, you protested the Jewish Culture Festival last year, which had nothing to do with Israel or Zionism. It was just Jewish food, Jewish music, Jewish art, and you protested it, and the rabbi said that was an anti-Semitic act. Do you disagree with that?
What Dershowitz is doing there is so despicable. That was Krem, the owner, talking to him, and he's trying to bring up the fact that Krem protested a Jewish event that was a Jewish festival of culture with food and art and music. And because they protested that Jewish event, somehow they are anti-Semitic. Well, here's the secret behind that little event. Performing at that event was a Jewish musician named Matisyahu, who is an outspoken supporter of the Israeli Defense Force. So the protest was over this one musician who was appearing at the festival and over that musician's support of Zionism. Here, Dershowitz tries to take it as it's a protest against the entire festival and all things Jewish. That's like saying someone that shows up at a country music festival to protest Morgan Wallen's racism is somehow saying all white country fans are racists. Dershowitz knows better. He's doing this on purpose to conflate anti-Semitism with a vendor's refusal to serve a particular customer based on his abhorrent political views. And it's just amazing to me how quickly these white defenders of their civil right to be served pierogies will jump up at this slight, at this terrible abuse, and then be the same kind of guys that will turn around and defend the Christian cake baker who wants to refuse service to all gay people. All gay people have to be denied service, not because of their own particular political views, but just because of the fact that they are gay. Alan Dershowitz, the kind of guy to jump right up and support that. Hell, I seem to remember religious people wanting to deny President Joe Biden the Catholic communion because of his personal views on abortion. So what's the standard here, Alan Dershowitz, when it comes to refusing service for someone? Well, by now you know that country baseline means it's time for our regular Boycott Idaho segment, where I remind you of all the reasons to avoid the handmade state. Now up to 73 reasons. You can find them all at radicalruss.com/Idaho. Boycott Idaho's. Take your ski vacation to Utah. Take your fly fishing vacation to Montana. And instead of potatoes, why don't you switch it out for a nice salad? Your waistline will thank you. Boycott Idaho, avoid the handmade state. And today we avoid the handmade state on the basis of it being the laboratories of white Christian nationalist patriarchal supremacy. I'm telling you, folks, if you want to know what the right has planned for the United States of America under Christian dominionism, all you got to do is take a look at what's going on in the churches in northern Idaho. CNN took a look at this particular religion, these Christ Church people that are called Kirkers, up in Moscow, Idaho, which is home of the University of Idaho, been in the news lately as the site of those horrific murders for which Brian Kohlberger was sentenced last week, I believe it was. But up there in northern Idaho, in Moscow, Idaho, they've got this Kirker brand of Christian nationalism, let me give you some clips from that CNN interview with the head of that church explaining what he has in mind for the United States.
I'd like to see the town be a Christian town. I'd like to see the state be a Christian state. I'd like to see the nation be a Christian nation. And I'd like to see the world be a Christian world.
They're not kidding around, folks. They have absolutely no vision for any multiculturalism, any multi-sectarianism for the entire world. And when pressed on this by the reporter, she asks about, well, there's Muslims in the world and there, other religions in the world. Are you saying they're going to eliminate all those religions? And he says, of course, peacefully. We'll do so peacefully by preaching the gospel of Christ, and they'll all just come around to the truth. But what if they don't? What if they decide that no, Prophet Muhammad was correct, and we're going to stick with Islam? What happens then? I think we all know what happens then. And in his mind, theocracy is the natural order of things, even in a democracy.
So every society is theocratic. The only question is who's theo? In a secular democracy, it would be demos, the people. In a Christian republic, it'd be Christ.
This religious wackadoodle thinks he can throw some Greek and Latin words at you and try to confuse you as to what they actually mean. Everything's a theocracy, but in a democracy, the god is demos? That's absolutely contradictory. Theo means God. Demos means people. Those two things are not the same. For one, in a democracy, I can subpoena demos. I can't subpoena Theo. In a democracy, we can take a plebiscite. We can have a vote amongst all the demos, and we can calculate what the demos think we ought to do. We can hand count that. We can electronically, however you want to do it. We can actually ask the demos how they would like to be organized, and they can respond to it. In a theocracy, we can't ask Theo. We can't ask Theo how everything should go. We have to go by what some men say Theo put down in a book a few thousand years ago. And it's incontrovertible. We're not allowed to question it. That's a long way from democracy, pal. And where exactly do women fit in with this demos you speak of, or in a theocracy?
Women are the kind of people that people come out of.
I'm sorry, what was that you said about women?
Women are the kind of people that people come out of.
Women are people that other people come out of. You got that, ladies? That's your job. You are breeding vessels. That's your purpose, to spit out babies. And not just a couple.
It doesn't take any talent to simply reproduce biologically. The wife and mother, who is the chief executive of the home, is entrusted with 3 or 4 or 5 eternal souls.
3 or 4 or 5. You got to pump out 3 or 4 or 5 of those kids. That way you'll be getting your glory in heaven or something like that. And there was a piece in this interview they went on. They talked to a couple of these other pastors in this church. And, are women equal? And the one guy says, well, yeah, they're equal in the eyes of the Lord because they're both flawed beings who've been saved. But then goes on to describe how absolutely unequal they would be. Because basically, it's the old Christian tradwife thing of men and women have different purposes. The woman is there to be the domestic goddess and to raise the children, and the man is there to go out into the world and conquer and to make money and support them all. And they all are subservient to Christ, and yada, yada, yada. We've heard it all before. They don't believe in women's equality. In fact, they don't even believe women should vote.
In my ideal society, we would vote as households. And I would ordinarily be the one that would cast the vote, but I would cast the vote having discussed it with my household.
That's another one of the pastors explaining the idea of voting by the household, which basically means only the man votes, right? Because the man's the head of the household. And having a discussion with the household about how the vote will go, yeah, I'm sure that'll be very, very productive. As the reporter pointed out, what if the woman disagrees with the man in that situation, and all the guy could go on to say is, well, that would lead to a very interesting discussion. Yeah, and the discussion would end with you saying, I'm going to vote for the guy I'm going to vote for, and what you have to say means nothing. Do we really think in this Christian household, with the man as the head of the household, that if the woman and the 3, 4, or 5 souls that she's pumped out have said, no, you ought to vote for someone else, that he's going to change his mind? Sure, that's exactly what's going to happen. Okay, so you're a misogynist, but how do you feel about people of different races?
Slavery was overseen and conducted by fallen human beings, and there were horrendous abuses, and there were also people who owned slaves who were decent human beings and didn't mistreat them.
Yes, I suppose there were very fine people on both sides of the slavery issue. Oh my God, you're going to hear more about that in my radical rant, by the way. Okay, so you want women to remain subservient to the man and not allowed to vote. You thought some slavers were okay, people who treated their slaves well. How about gay and lesbian folks? What do you think about them?
In the late 70s and early 80s, sodomy was a felony in all 50 states. That America of that day was not a totalitarian hellhole.
Not for straight white men, it wasn't. But if you were a gay man in Texas in the 1990s, it kind of felt like a totalitarian hellhole, I'll bet, knowing that you could be criminalized just for who you happen to love.
I'm not a white nationalist. I'm not a fascist. I'm not a racist. I'm not a misogynist.
You're not a white nationalist, but you make apologies for American chattel slavery. You're not a Nazi, but you want to establish a fascist dictatorship in the name of Christ. You're not a racist, but again, you supported some of those slavers. And you're not a misogynist, but you think women should be second-class citizen. I notice you didn't deny being a homophobe or a transphobe, at least some measure of honesty there. And this is the pastor of this Christian church sect in Moscow, Idaho, that has spread to hundreds of cities around the United States, that has established a church in Washington, D.C., and has some pretty high-level cabinet official praising his work.
Now we're standing on the shoulders of a generation later, the Doug Wilsons and the others.
That's the Secretary of Defense, Pete Hegseth, the alcoholic former Weekend Fox News anchor, the one who was allowing journalists in on private signal chats, violating records-keeping laws, on attacks in the Middle East. This idiot praising Doug Wilson, the man who's the subject of these clips here, the pastor from that church in Moscow, Idaho. The Department of Defense, which has already set up prayer meetings and prayer revivals at the Pentagon, who has his Deus Vult tattoo, who's a wannabe crusader for Christ, wants to wipe out all of the infidel religions. It's time that we start to take this seriously. It's time that people on the left in the Democratic Party start fighting for secular democracy, start fighting for multiculturalism, multi-sectarianism, multi-racialism, multi-ethnicity in this country. With the same sort of religious fervor, these guys are fighting for their vision of white Christian nationalist patriarchy. I fear that our side isn't taking these people seriously enough in their mega churches and their massive revivals. And I fear that part of the reluctance to want to take them on is fear of the left, fear of us being anti-religious or being painted as anti-religion. When in fact, we kind of need to be. It is the support of all the mainstream religious people who give a pass to these more extreme religious people. We hear so many times during the war on terror, well, why won't the mainstream Muslims condemn the Hamas? Why won't they condemn ISIS? Why won't they condemn these Muslim extremist groups? We need to start doing the same thing to our domestic Christian churches and asking them, why aren't you condemning that church? Why aren't you condemning the Joel Austins and the Doug Wilsons? Why aren't you condemning the people that sit in their palatial $1 million parsonages while people in their own towns are recovering from floods and have no place to stay? It's time to start calling out these Christian grifters, these white nationalists, these fascists, these anti-democratic forces in our country, and to not be afraid to call them out for their misinterpretation and misapplication of these spiritual texts. Today in the Radical Rant, I'm going to continue on this theme about the white Christian nationalists who are attempting to hijack our democracy. And one of the ways they want to do that is through our educational system. We've already seen the installation of the WWE executive Linda McMahon, you know, the one who's worried about A1 teaching our students. Yeah, Linda McMahon's out there helping to dismantle the Department of Education, tear it down, make sure that kids with special needs can't get education, make sure that we're not teaching any woke or DEI out there. McMahon was actually at a conference recently speaking, and it was kind of hilarious because she got hacked while she was speaking.
We're going to take this. The funding will come from the Department of Education.
So let's talk free speech. Linda McMahon is a corrupt billionaire donor who knows nothing.
Apparently, it's the CCP didn't like that. They're cutting into our technology.
That was someone hacking into the feed saying that Linda McMahon is a corrupt billionaire oligarch. And I love the reaction from the other panelists who's, oh, the CCP is hacked into our feed, the Chinese Communist Party. Yeah, that's it. Had to be Chinese that were hacking in, because nobody here in America would be upset with Linda McMahon being a billionaire oligarch, and no one in America would have the skills to be. Yeah, you ever notice that? Is when the people are booing at the town halls, they're bust in from somewhere else. When the oligarchs are getting hacked, they must have been hacked by foreign powers. They can't possibly imagine that here in the United States of America we might be upset with what they're up to. And what they're up to is dismantling our education system and trying to replace it with propaganda that supports the white Christian nationalist worldview. They shut down the Corporation for Public Broadcasting. They're going after PBS and what they feel is liberal indoctrination to our kids, you know, teaching them things like sharing is caring and how to count. And they've got something ready to go to replace it. And this again goes to my fear that for the past 60 or so years, the white Christian nationalist right has been building up this infrastructure, have been preparing and planning for what they call the Second American Revolution, which one of the Project 2025 architects said would, quote, be bloodless if the left allows it to be. They clearly mean to remake the United States as a Christian theocracy, where white men, straight white men, sit supreme, where women are vessels that pump out 3 to 4 to 5 souls and manage the household, and where children are taught by PragerU. Now, if you don't know what PragerU is, Prager is Dennis Prager, who is a right-wing Christian talk radio host. And he set up PragerU, which is this compendium, this library of videos. And one set of them are made for kids. You can find them at PragerU.com/kids if you want to see what they want to replace Big Bird and Bert and Ernie and Elmo and all of that, what they want to replace as the means of teaching our kids. Let me start off with this one. This one's from Candace Owens. She's the black conservative commentator. And this one is designed to instruct kids and young adults that white people aren't to blame for slavery.
Here's the first thing you need to know. Slavery was not invented by white people.
No, but we really kind of perfected it, didn't we?
Slavery existed in Africa, Asia, and the Middle East. The word slave actually comes from the Slavs of Eastern Europe. Millions of them All white, by the way.
Okay, so Owens goes through the rest of this video detailing the history of slavery going all the way back to the ancient Egyptians and how slavery has been around forever and ever. And it wasn't just white people that did it. Africans enslaved other Africans, and the Middle East enslaved other Middle Easterners. And so that's why we needn't feel guilty about the slavery we practiced as white people against black people here in the United States of America from 1619 all the way through the 1860s.
Here's the second thing you need to know. White people were the first to formally put an end to slavery.
See? We're the good guys. We ended slavery in 1830s in Britain and the 1840s in France and then the 1860s in the United States of America. White people ended slavery. You know, no mention about the Haitians who rebelled in Haiti and overcame the French slavers that led to all of the worry amongst the white people that they ought to do something about the slavery thing. Yeah, no mention of the Haitians. But yeah, we white people, we're the good guys because we fought a civil war and ended slavery. Even though the same kind of people that support Candace Owens are the ones that are sporting the Confederate flags on the back of their pickup trucks and saying it's heritage, not hate. And the same kind of people who tore down Reconstruction after 12 years and installed Jim Crow. No mention about Jim Crow and the lynchings and the massacres that took place even after slavery was ended. But do go on, Candace.
Yet today we are never told to consider the murderous Persian Empire or the cannibalism of indigenous tribes of North and South America or the heinous actions under the imperialistic Muslim, Chinese, Mongol, or Japanese empires, to name just a few. Instead, we're told that slavery is a white phenomenon.
Yeah, why is it that when we're talking about the disproportionate effect of racism in American black people's lives, that we don't bring up the slavery that was conducted by the Mongol Empire? How could we be so careless as to forget the slavery that the Japanese undertook in China, or Africans when they enslaved other Africans, or the Carib people enslaving the Taino? How come we never bring those up when we're talking about how black resumes get 50% the callbacks of white resumes, how black maternal mortality is far greater than white maternal mortality, how black people make up 13% of the U.S. population, but nearly half of the people that are incarcerated? Gee, why do we not bring up Mongol slavery from the ancient past when we're talking about how black people have 1/10 the net worth of white people in this country? What the hell is wrong with us with not bringing up the slavery that everyone else ever did when discussing the effects of American slavery here in the United States? What the hell's wrong with us?
Black victimhood is nothing if not profitable. It elects politicians and funds racial grievance groups. And if black Americans began to view themselves as partners in the American dream, then the race hustlers would soon be out of business. And who wants that? I'm Candace Owens, author of Blackout, for Prager University.
Yes, the black woman who is paid quite handsomely by Prager University to make apology videos for white chattel slavery against black people in the United States so that white people today can watch those videos and feel better about themselves not being participants in American racism. She would like you to know that the race hustlers might go out of business. Okay, well, let's take a look at another one of these PragerU videos on another subject, the genocide of Native Americans. What would the folks on the right want to be teaching your kids about the genocide of the Native Americans? Let's turn to internet personality Steven Crowder wearing a black t-shirt with a couple of pistols on it for more information.
The Native Americans were mostly wiped out through infectious diseases that the settlers had inadvertently brought with them. Of the estimated 250,000 natives in Hispaniola, Columbus's first stop in the Americas in 1492, new infectious diseases wiped out a staggering 95% of their population by 1517.
Oh, it was just inadvertent genocide. We just accidentally brought some diseases over that killed all those people, took a population of 250,000 down to 25,000 in the span of 25 years. Oops, we didn't mean to wipe you completely out. Our bad for coming over here, I suppose. Never mind ignoring the history of how some of those diseases got passed on to natives later on, when we would actually give them smallpox-infected blankets on purpose to ensure that their kids would get infected and they'd all die from smallpox. We did that. We committed biological warfare. If that's not a definition of genocide, I don't know what is.
Take Wounded Knee. Although hundreds of years later, I only bring it up because I know that if I don't, you will. It's become ubiquitous with the idea of Native American genocide. After all, there were 150 to 350 Aboriginals killed or wounded. That's terrible. But there were also 25 American soldiers killed and 39 wounded. That's not genocide. That's a one-sided beatdown with Old Glory wielding a hammer.
It's remarkable how they're using the same exact logic to defend the Israeli Defense Forces genocide in Gaza. Well, it's not a genocide. We haven't killed nearly enough of them to qualify as a genocide. It's like the Sideshow Bob thing. What is this? Attempted murder? Do they give Nobel Prizes for attempted chemistry? Okay, so at Wounded Knee, about 300 Native Americans were killed, but about 30 Americans were killed. So therefore, it's not a genocide. It's just a one-sided beatdown with Old Glory bringing the hammer. Look, the results of the genocide are quite clear. We've seen the photos of the massive mountain of bison skulls. Literally, 30-foot tall mountain of bison skulls. Because we had a policy to kill all the bison we could in order to deplete the food supply and the clothing supply, the shelter supply, because they made those teepees out of hides, to be able to deprive the Native American people of the ability to survive. That's genocide. We wiped out their food supply. That's genocide. We rounded them up and transported them away from their homelands into camps. That's genocide. But not according to the people at PragerU, not according to the people that want to teach your kids, that want to replace your PBS with cute little cartoons like this one. Let me give you one last set of clips here. This is from a cartoon specifically from the PragerU.com/kids website to try to allay the disturbing messages that kids have been told about Christopher Columbus and Columbus Day.
How can you come here to the 15th century and judge me by your standards from the 21st century? For those in the future to look back and do this is, well, estúpido.
This is the game PragerU and the right-wingers like to play to try to whitewash, pun intended, the atrocities of the past. And they do this with Columbus by saying, well, look, you know, sure, he showed up there and enslaved a bunch of people, but you can't judge him by the standards of today. Why, back in 1492, back in the 15th century, everybody had slaves. Slavery is just the way things went. You know, talk to Candace Owens. She'll tell you all about it, man. Slavery was going on everywhere. You can't judge the people back then by the standards of today. Okay, how about we judge Columbus by the standards of the day? I'm going to give you just this little quote. This is from Columbus's contemporary and shipmate. He was on the ships with Columbus. His name was Bartolomé de las Casas. He wrote, quote, "Such inhumanities and barbarisms were committed in my sight as no age can parallel. My eyes have seen these acts so foreign to human nature that now I tremble as I write." End quote. Judging by the standards of his time, his own shipmate, who saw not just the enslaving of the Taino people, the murdering of the Taino people, the genocide of the Taino people, the raping and pedophilia. Christopher Columbus was selling off girls as young as 9 years old as sex slaves to be raped by the members of his crew. And Bartolomeo de la Casa said such inhumanities and barbarisms were committed in my sight as no age can parallel. No age. So even in the 15th century, saying we could look back to the 10th, look back to the 5th, look back to BC times and not find anything as barbarous and inhumane as what Christopher Columbus was up to.
I love and am thankful for the ancient Greeks, but they did lots of things that here in 1493 I do not agree with. They permitted lifestyles and worshiped gods that, as a Christian, I think is very bad.
That's cartoon Columbus continuing to justify why we, in the 21st century, can't judge his slavery, raping, genocide, and pedophilia by the standards of today versus the 15th century, because he, in the 15th century, thought that the Greeks having gay relationships and worshiping other gods was also bad. You know, worshiping Zeus, that's like, sending 9-year-olds off to be raped. Allowing gay people to have loving relationships, why, that's a lot like genociding an entire island. It's amazing they're allowed to get away with this kind of stuff. It's amazing that anyone could subscribe to this, but folks, millions of Americans do. Prager University is quite successful. They've got hundreds, maybe thousands of videos out there. And they've got schools all over the place and homeschoolers all over the place who are using these videos to instruct their kids, to try to alleviate any responsibility or guilt they might feel over barbarism, inhumanity, genocide, rape, any of these terrible atrocities that have been committed by our ancestors. That's not to say other people haven't been barbarous and inhumane. It's not to say that other countries don't have their own problems. But if we want to solve American problems, we need to look at American history. And we need to be honest about that American history. So be advised. PragerU is out there. The Kirkers are out there. The white Christian nationalists are out there. They've been planning. They've been scheming. They've been saving. They've been organizing. It's time for the secular Democratic left to have the same sort of religious fervor for our vision as they do for theirs.
And it goes down smooth. Hey!
Well, that's all the time we've got for this week's Smoke Session. The Radical Russ Show is produced, directed, researched, written, recited, posted, and catered by me, Radical Russ Belville, and governed by Creative Commons Share-alike licensing. News, clips, and social media posts are reproduced under fair use copyright laws for commentary and analysis. My main theme is We Love the Herb by Herbal Nation, and interstitial music is by me, my drum machine, and my bass guitar. Which brings us to our post-credits scene. So I saw word come through my social media feed that they're doing a reboot of the 1986 classic movie Highlander with Henry Cavill playing the Highlander, Connor McLeod, Russell Crowe playing the Egyptian Spaniard Ramirez, and Dave Bautista playing the Russian villain, the Kurgan. Okay, so the Scottish guy is going to be played by the white American. The Egyptian Spanish guy is going to be played by the white Australian. And the white Russian guy is going to be played by the Hispanic guy. Well, really, it's not that different than the original Highlander. You had Sean Connery, the Scotsman, playing the Egyptian Spaniard, and you had, well, I guess the lead actor was Scottish, so that's good. And the Kurgan was Clancy Brown, who's not exactly Russian. But hey, regardless of all the casting issues, can I just say one word? No! No, 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 no. No Highlander reboot. Do not reboot Highlander. What part of there can be only one are you not understanding here? I'm as angry as I was when they came out with the sequel, Highlander 2, as when they came out with the TV show Highlander. All of those are abominations. They should not exist. There should be one Highlander movie with its awesome Queen soundtrack and no more. Oh, quick update on my hashtag Tubi TV night. where we follow various free shows we can see on the Tubi app. And I just finished my binging of the 19-episode single-season 2002 sci-fi show Odyssey 5, starring Peter Weller. And as sci-fi shows go, I gotta say, don't waste your time on it. Okay, so it's somehow the Earth blew up, and then these 5 in the space shuttle, the only ones who survived, and they're sent back 5 years in time by the Seeker to try to stop the Earth from blowing up, but we never see the Seeker or hear from him again at all in the rest of the series. And then in the series, there's these sentients that are code, they're AI, but then they can take physical bodies, but the physical bodies show up at a lower temperature so you can see them through thermal imaging, but then nobody else seems to want to ever use this thermal imaging anywhere else to try to seek them out. And somehow there's a senator involved with this, and then there's a cabal. And the terrible thing about this is it's one of these shows that they built it all up to this cliffhanger at the end of the season, and then it got canceled apparently, so there's no answers. So at the end of the cliffhanger, the moon might be hollow, and the sentients might actually be from Mars, and the secret cabal in the U.S. military might actually be the good guys trying to help us out. Oh, it's just a mess, folks. I suffered through it. You shouldn't have to. Don't waste your time on Odyssey 5. And the other quick note I have to get to is a story in the New York Times entitled Uber's Festering Sexual Assault Problem. And the post that came across with it said, quote, every 8 minutes, that's how often a U.S. Uber passenger reports a driver for sexual assault or misconduct. But rather than solve the problem, Uber is just telling passengers to request a woman driver and hope that one's available. Yes! Is there someone that actually agrees with me that blanket sexual discrimination against all male drivers is not the way to solve the problem of sexual assault and harassment by some male drivers? Thank you, New York Times. I don't get to say that very often, but thank you. You can contact me by email at radicalruss@gmail.com. Call my message line at 877-RUSS-420. That's 877-877-420. And reach me on social media on Blue Sky as radicalruss.com and nowhere else. You can support this podcast financially by donating to @RadicalRuss on Venmo, RadRuss on Cash App, or via PayPal on my website at radicalruss.com. Oh, and one other quick little social media note. I do have an Instagram page for my dogs. It's A Chaos of Chihuahuas on Instagram if you'd like to follow the adventures of Lil Kenny, Susie Q, Sarah Smile, and Black Betty. Get this podcast on Spotify, Apple Music, my website, or wherever you get your podcasts. Thanks for listening, and until next week, take care of each other.